Taking a deep breath and smoothing out the creases in my skirt, I pushed open the thick wooden door to Jake's new office. The polished plaque on the door, barely a week old, gleamed with the words, Jake Hartley, President. It was a title he had dreamed of and fought for, yet as I stepped inside, I couldn't shake the unease tightening in my chest. Jake's brow was furrowed in concentration as he looked up briefly from his computer. "So busy, Nora. What is it?" he asked sharply, his tone more impatient than loving. Forcing a smile onto my face, I steadied my voice. "The staff meeting starts in 10 minutes, and the Henderson account files are ready for your review." Jake didn't even glance at me. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he muttered, "Stop it. I have more pressing matters to attend to." I hesitated, trying to reason with him. "But Jake, everyone's been working hard all week to prepare their presentations. They're expecting—" "I told them to cancel," he interrupted, his eyes glued to the television mounted on the wall. His voice was sharp, almost cutting. "That's not a request, Nora. It's a command." Biting my tongue, I nodded quickly and turned away, the sting of his words settling deep in my chest. As I shut the door, I caught a glimpse of Jake's reflection in the window. He was already engrossed in his work again, oblivious to the hurt he had just caused. Leaning against the wall in the corridor, I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to calm the relentless pounding of my heart. I couldn't ignore the ache inside me. The man sitting in that office wasn't the Jake I had married. The man I had once loved so deeply had been replaced by someone distant, cold, and unreachable. Where had my Jake gone, and was there any hope of getting him back? The man I loved had been devoted to his team and had a strong interest in architecture. The posh title seems to have gone directly to his head now. "All right, Nora?" Jake's father, Kenneth, was eyeing me anxiously when I looked up. He continued to visit the office on a regular basis even after retiring. I forced a smile and straightened. "Just a busy morning, of course. Kenneth, how are you doing?" He looked at me for a while. "You don't look it, but I'm all right. Now what has my son done?" I paused, caught between frustration and loyalty. "Really, it's nothing. Jake is simply getting used to his new role." Kenneth's eyes squinted, either letting it drop to his head or adapting. Jake's voice erupted from his office before I could reply. "Nora, those files are where?" I took the folder off my desk and gave Kenneth a pitying glance. "Duty calls." Jake barely looked up as I walked back into his office. "At last." "As you go, leave them there and shut the door," I said, steeling myself. "You are greatly needed by the team at this meeting. They put a lot of effort into—" He slapped his hand down on the desk. "God damn you, Nora. I am now the president. You understand that I determine what's significant, not you or anybody else?" His shout startled me, and I winced. "Jake, I'm only attempting to assist. Your father values this business greatly, and I assured him that I would—" "My father isn't in charge anymore," Jake cut in, his tone icy. "I am, and perhaps you shouldn't be here either, if you can't take it." I felt like I was slapped by the words. I looked for signs of the man I had fallen in love with, but all I saw was a stranger who was intoxicated by ego and power. "Okay," I muttered. "I'll call off the meeting." Jake's phone buzzed as I turned to go. His tone suddenly changed to one of slick charm as he responded. "Bella, sweetheart?" "Yes. I am eagerly anticipating our business lunch. I'll see you shortly." On the doorknob, my hand froze. "Bella?" Even though I didn't recognize the name, Jake's delivery of it chilled me. Before he realized I was observing, I caught a glimpse of a cunning smile on his face as I looked back. "What?" He lost his temper. "You have job to do, don't you?" With a silent nod, I left the office, my head spinning. When I announced the postponed meeting, I was met with the dismayed expressions of our team outside, but their annoyance was nothing compared to the fear that was growing inside of me. Bella was who? And what sort of business lunch brought that smile on my husband's face? Bella and my husband both sprang to their feet. They didn't seem to know how to react. I became increasingly persuaded as I fell into my chair that my business and my marriage were going to encounter a storm for which none of us was ready. I was determined to salvage as much of yesterday's catastrophe as possible, so I got to the office early the following morning. I could feel the tension as I moved through the bullpen. As I went by, the whispers stopped, and were replaced by awkward nods and fake grins. Our lead designer, Sarah, yelled out, "Good morning, Nora!" "Any updates on the meeting's rescheduling?" I wavered, caught between being honest and being diplomatic. "Sarah, I'm working on it. Jake's getting used to his new position." Sarah's brows lifted. "Adapting, is that the new name for it?" Jake's loud voice boomed through the office before I could reply. "Nora! Now my office!" In order to prepare myself, I rushed to Jake's door. He was pacing, waves of irritation emanating from him. "What on earth is this?" He threw me a pile of papers. With a sinking heart, I glanced at the top sheet. The design team filed a formal complaint, pointing to Jake's tardiness at important meetings and delays in project clearances. "They're just frustrated, Jake. Would it be possible for us to arrange a meeting to discuss their concerns?" "Their concerns?" He sneered. "This is not a daycare. I'm operating a business. They are free to depart if they are unable to cope with the demand. But these are the most reliable workers for your father, Jake. They have years of experience with the organization." He flashed his eyes dangerously. "My father is no longer in command. I am, and a group of petulant designers will not challenge my authority." Steeling myself, I inhaled deeply. "Please, Jake, this isn't you. What's actually happening?" I briefly caught a glimpse of the previous Jake, vulnerable, unsure, but it was gone as fast as it had come. "Nothing's happening," he yelled. "Just keep them in line and do your job. Isn't that what I'm paying you for?" He was unaware of how much the words hurt. I was more than a worker. I was his partner, his wife, or so I believed. Jake's phone buzzed as I turned to go. A cheeky smirk formed across his face as he took a quick look at it. "I'm going to eat lunch. Put my calls on hold. We have a client meeting at 1, though, Jake." Halfway out the door, he added, "Reschedule it." A knot formed in my stomach as I watched him leave. Work was no longer the only factor in this. There was a serious problem. I threw myself back into damage control at my station, calming down irate customers and calming down agitated employees. I felt worn out and tense by the middle of the afternoon. I was surprised by a soft knock on my cubicle. When I looked up, Kenneth had a worried expression on his face. "Do you have a moment, Nora?" Thankful for the interruption, I nodded. With gentle yet inquisitive gaze, Kenneth took a seat across from me. He said, "I've been hearing things about Jake and how he's managing the business." Unsure how to react, I swallowed hard. Kenneth had given his kid the task of his life. How could I let him know that everything was unraveling? I... Kenneth, he silenced me with a palm. "Nora, you don't have to keep him safe. Not me. I've known for some time that something wasn't right. I simply hoped that he would develop into the part." My eyes pricked with tears. I said, "I don't know what to do. I can't get him to listen. Everyone is being pushed away by him." Kenneth squeezed my hand as he reached across the desk. "Nora, we'll work this out. This family, this business, it means the world to me. I will not allow Jake to ruin it." Jake's voice echoed through the office again at that moment. "Where on earth is everyone? We have job to do, don't we?" Kenneth and I looked at each other. The storm had not yet passed. Kenneth's comments rang in my head as I stood to confront whatever situation Jake had created. Together, I felt a ray of hope for the first time in weeks. That hope, however, vanished as I rounded the corner and saw Jake standing there with a bit of lipstick on his collar and his tie sloppy. There was nothing I could do to stop the guy I loved from slipping away. Tired from another day of repairing damage at the office, I walked slowly up the driveway. I just wanted a glass of wine and a nice bath, but the front door swung open as I grabbed my keys. A gorgeous blonde walked out with her top hurriedly fastened and her lipstick a little smudged. Her eyes widened with recognition, and she froze upon seeing me. "Well, you must be Nora," she purred, "getting better fast." "I am Jake's consultant, Bella." My entire universe shook. With nauseating clarity, everything came together. Bella, Jake's phone number, the lipstick on his collar. "Consultant." I succeeded, speaking hardly louder than a whisper. A rapacious smile curved Bella's lips. "Indeed. Jake and I have been collaborating closely. You know he's quite the visionary. Jake came in the doorway, his face white, before I could reply. "You're home early, Nora." I looked at him, trying to find some sign of regret or shame, but all I saw was fear and desperation. He hurriedly answered. Bella was just leaving and ushered her to her vehicle. After exchanging a heated look, she drove out, leaving my husband and I by ourselves. Suddenly, I felt as though I didn't know him at all. With my head spinning, I brushed by Jake and entered the home. His justifications were already flowing as he followed. "It's not what you think, Nora. All Bella is doing is assisting with some new initiatives. We were discussing ideas for—" I turned to look at him. "Don't! Jake, you have no right to lie to me. Not right now." The facade cracked as he stumbled. "I didn't intend for this to occur. It simply did." "It just happened," I repeated, raising my voice. "As if you simply happen to overlook your professional obligations? As if you simply treat your staff members, who are also our friends, like filth?" Jake's face became stern. "You have no idea how much strain I'm under. Dad left me shoes I couldn't possibly fill. I'm doing my hardest. Through an affair? By driving the business to its demise? I'm not." With a look of frustration on his face, he paused. "Look, I can solve this, but it became complicated. This is something we can resolve." I gave a sour laugh. "We? Jake, there is no longer a we." I knew the words were true as soon as I said them. Everything we had, including our marriage and relationship, was destroyed by Jake's treachery and my own heedless devotion. Jake's cell rang. His countenance was conflicted as he looked at it. "Isn't that Bella?" Silently, I said. He did not refute it. "Please let me explain, Nora." However, I had finished listening to him and making excuses for him. After grabbing my keys, I made my way to the door. "Where are you heading?" I was called after by Jake. I shot back. "Away from you." I must think. Tears clouded my vision as I drove through the streets that were getting darker. What had happened to us? Everything was falling apart around me, including the guy I loved and the life we had created. My phone rang. The screen flashed Kenneth's name. After hesitating, I responded. "Nora, are you okay? You hurried out of the office?" Something inside me was broken by his compassion. Jake's infidelity, the company's situation, and my own broken heart were all spilled out when the dam burst. Kenneth listened without comment. After I was done, he murmured quietly, "I'm terribly sorry, Nora. I am solely to blame for this. I should never have put Jake under so much pressure. I insisted that it's not your fault. Jake made his decisions." "Maybe," Kenneth groaned, "but we have to make ours now. Visit my home. Together we will solve this." I felt a peculiar calmness descend upon me as I headed toward Kenneth's neighborhood. The worst had occurred. Jake's treachery was very visible. However, I wasn't by myself, and I felt a glimmer of strength returning for the first time in months. I would confront whatever came next. No more justifications. No more heedless allegiance. I had to stand up for the business that had become my second home, and for myself. Despite the muttering and sidelong glances, I entered the office with my head held high. I was resolved to take on whatever came my way after speaking with Kenneth last night, but when I turned the corner, I witnessed something that nothing could have foreseen. Jake was standing in the center of the bullpen, his arm around Bella's waist. A few months ago, I wouldn't have looked out of place in the pencil skirt and top she was wearing. "I want to introduce you all to Bella." With a voice that cut through the startled hush, Jake declared, "She will become a special consultant on our team." As I met Jake's eyes, my heart thumped in my ears. He was staring at me, daring me to make a fuss. Bella grinned, obviously enjoying her new role in the organization and in my husband's embrace. Our chief designer, Sarah, was the first to speak. "We already have a complete crew, though, Mr. Hartley," Jake cut in effortlessly. "And Nora will be helping Bella get up to speed. Will you not, my love?" Everyone looked at me. I could sense my coworkers' interest and sympathy mixed together. I inhaled deeply and forced a smile that was more like a grimace. "Naturally," I succeeded. "Bella, welcome on board." The hours that followed were a haze of barely veiled stress and strained politeness. I withdrew to my office and tried to concentrate on my work, but Jake's betrayal kept coming back to me. I was shocked out of my reverie by a knock on my door. Kenneth was the one. His face was marked with worry. "I just heard, Nora. How are you?" I fought back tears as I shook my head. "Kenneth, I'm not sure how much more of this I can handle. Jake seems intent on hurting me in every manner imaginable." Kenneth's face grew stern. "This is over. A board meeting is being called in an emergency. Jake has overreacted." Jake stormed into the office, his face flushed with rage before I could reply. Dad, what in the world are you doing?" he growled. "Now this is my business. Enough. You can't just waltz in and—" Jake was silenced by Kenneth's loud voice. "You have denigrated all of my creations. It's time for you to deal with the fallout." Jake squinted his eyes. "Repercussions? I've only just begun. Actually—" He took an envelope out of his jacket and tossed it onto my desk. "Think of this as my first official presidential act." My hands were shaking when I opened the letter. There were divorce papers inside that Jake had previously signed. "Are you letting me go?" I muttered, feeling a wave of hurt and disbelief. Jake laughed icily. "Terminating you, Nora? Oh no. I'm releasing you. From everything, including this job and this marriage." My world fell apart as I gazed at the documents, all those years and our hopes condensed into a few pages of legalese. Kenneth begged Jake, "Please, consider what you are doing. The foundation of this business has been Nora," Jake yelled. Without her, we'll finally move forward. Dad, you have to face it. Your methods are no longer effective. For the future, Bella and I have huge ambitions." A peculiar calm descended upon me while they argued. I glanced at the divorce documents before turning to confront Jake, a stranger who was dressed like my husband. I decided at that very time. "I'll sign," I replied softly, interrupting their intense conversation. Shocked, both men turned to face me. Jake was the first to recover, his face displaying a victorious grin. "Nora, I knew you'd see reason. Really, it's for the best." I slowly looked into his eyes. "Jake, you're correct. Though not for the reasons you believe, it is for the best." I steadied my fingers and signed the documents. I felt a burden lifted off my shoulders as I did. Even when Jake ended our marriage, I was tired of being the victim. I stood up and declared, "I quit." Jake's smile faltered, affected instantly. "What?" I interrupted. "You can't just—" "I can, and I am. Jake, good luck managing this business without me. You will require it." I heard Kenneth's voice behind me as I left the office with my head held high. "Hold on, Nora." I stopped and turned around. Pride and resolve were mixed together in Kenneth's eyes. He continued, "I have a proposal for you that could save this company and give you the new beginning you deserve." I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. I was prepared to face whatever came next, on my own terms. My hands were encircling a hot mug of tea as I sat across from Kenneth in his comfortable home office. My mind was whirling with the events of the last several days. Kenneth said, "I want you to come work for my nonprofit architectural trust, Nora," in a soft but forceful tone. "Someone with your abilities and moral character is what we need." Startled, I blinked. "But what about the business, Kenneth? Jake?" Kenneth interrupted, his eyes tinged with melancholy. "Jake made his choice. It's your turn to make yours now." My phone buzzed while I was thinking over his offer, and it was Sarah who texted me. "SOS, everything is going apart here, and Jake and Bella are running the property into the ground. Nora, we need you." My heart tightened. I still cared about the business and the people I had spent years working with, in spite of everything. I informed Kenneth that I needed some time to contemplate, and he nodded in understanding. "Don't take too long, of course. Both of us are aware that Jake will not spend any time in destroying our creation." I braced myself and went into the office one more time the following morning to tidy my desk. Whispered talks broke off suddenly as I went by, creating a tense atmosphere. Sarah showed up at my home with a worried expression on her face as I was packing. "It's a mess, Nora. Thank God you're here. Jake has canceled 3 big projects. Bella has been reassigning teams without considering their competence. Clients are upset, and—" "I don't work here anymore, Sarah," I cut in, my voice tense. "There's nothing I can do." Sarah's gaze expanded. If you're going to leave, what about us? How about the business? Jake's voice erupted from the hallway before I could reply. What are you doing here, Nora? Bella was a smug shadow behind him as he strode into my office. I said calmly, not to be intimidated, I'm simply gathering my belongings. Jake squinted his eyes. Excellent. You should go as quickly as possible. Bella is more than competent of taking care of your obligations. I couldn't contain my laughter. Is she? Are clients threatening to withdraw because of this? Why is the staff so disorganized? With her immaculately manicured nails pressing into Jake's arm, Bella took a step forward. I'll let you know that I'm performing admirably. I'm a natural, according to Jake. I'm sure he does, I said calmly, but it takes more than just being natural to operate a successful architecture practice. Anger made Jake's face flush. That's sufficient. Leave, Nora. This place is no longer yours. A disturbance broke out in the corridor as I was gathering up my box of possessions. With 2 board members on either side of him, Kenneth marched in. What's happening? Jake made a demand. Kenneth spoke in a stern tone. Son, an urgent board meeting. We're here to talk about your future as president, because your recent actions have jeopardized this organization. Jake's confidence crumbled, and he turned pale. This is not possible. Now I'm in command, one of the board members sadly remarked. We'll see about that. I noticed Kenneth as the group made their way to the conference room. If you don't mind, Nora, we could use your wisdom in this meeting. I paused, caught between my devotion to the business I had helped create and my wish to get rid of this disaster. Jake scoffed. Dad, she's no longer employed here. She cannot speak. Something broke inside of me. I straightened my shoulders and put down my box. In fact, I believe I will attend this meeting. Ultimately, it appears that I am the only one who is aware of the true operations of this business. Bella let out a gasp. Kenneth grinned brightly, but Jake sputtered. I was filled with resolve as we walked into the meeting room. It was no longer just about me. The livelihoods of all the employees and the legacy Kenneth had established had to be safeguarded. I was prepared to fight no matter what, for the business and the people I believed in. Not for Jake or our broken marriage. It was time to prove my abilities to everyone, Jake in particular. As I presented the company's dire circumstances, the boardroom erupted in tension. The table was covered with reports and spreadsheets, many of which were scathing critiques of Jake's leadership. I stated, my voice firm despite my heart hammering, that we've lost 3 significant clients in the last month alone. Employee morale is at an all-time low, and our industry reputation is in ruins. Jake's expression was one of incredulity and rage. This is absurd. We're doing all okay. I've been working with Bella on new tactics that will what, Jake? Kenneth cut in, his tone piercing. Push us further into the earth? The figures are honest. I saw the board members look at each other anxiously. This was the crucial moment that would decide the future of the business that we had all put so much effort into creating. Bella, who had been adamant about going, spoke up. But Jake has been putting forth a lot of effort. He has been generating creative ideas at the office late into the night, every day. I couldn't resist laughing. What do you call that? Because all I see when I stand here is a firm in trouble and a president who is more preoccupied with his personal life than his work obligations. Dangerously. Jake's eyes flared. Nora, you have no idea what you're talking about. All you're upset about is that I moved on. Have you moved on? I chuckled. With credulity. Our marriage was ruined by you, and now you're ruining this business. Jake, that's not progressing. That's destroying everything with fire. Mr. Hawkins, the board's oldest member, cleared his throat. We've heard enough, I believe. It is obvious that immediate action is required to salvage this business. Jake went pale. What do you say? Mr. Hawkins went on to add that we must think about hiring new leadership with immediate effect. Chaos broke out in the room. Bella sobbed, Jake yelled accusations, and the board members quarreled with one another. I sat quietly through it all, a strange calmness descending upon me. Jake's eyes were wild as he suddenly turned to face me. Please, Nora, you must assist me. I can fix this. Tell them. Inform them that we may collaborate once more. This man who had once been my partner in every way was staring back at me. I just had a glimpse of the Jake I knew before, fearful, exposed, and begging for assistance. However, reality returned with a jolt when Bella's hand slithered possessively around his arm. I said quietly, "I'm sorry, Jake. However, you made a decision. You now have to deal with the fallout." With a voice that broke through the clamor, Kenneth stood up. "I propose that we take a vote to keep Jake in charge of this business. Raise your hand if you are in support of ousting Jake from his presidency." As hands started to raise, time appeared to slow down. A resounding majority, 1, 2, or 3. The realization of what was happening caused Jake's face to crumble. "It's unfair," Bella cried. "This cannot be done to us." However, it was finished. My beloved firm was in jeopardy while Jake was away. Kenneth drew me aside as the meeting came to an end. "We need you, Nora. You are needed by the company. Will you return to assist us in rebuilding?" I paused, caught between wanting to help and wanting a new beginning. Jake came over before I could respond, his eyes urgent and ringed with red. "Please, Nora," he pleaded. "Keep them from doing this. No one knows me as well as you do. If you just give me another chance, you know I can make this right." I felt their expectations bearing down on me as I glanced from Jake to Kenneth. Both the company's and my own futures were on the line. I understood then that there was more at stake than merely preserving a company. It was about defending myself, my value, and all that I had fought so hard to accomplish. I took a big breath and decided. I understood that whatever happened next would be a game changer. A sea of eager faces greeted me as I stood at the podium. The recent turmoil had prompted the company-wide meeting, and it was my responsibility as the recently hired temporary CO to steer the ship in the right direction. I started, as many of you are aware, my voice firm in spite of my pounding pulse. Our company has had a turbulent few weeks, but today is a new beginning. I caught a glimpse of Jake, his face gaunt, sneaking into the rear of the room. There was no sign of Bella. Yes, we have seen failures and clientele loss, but the core of our business, the talent, commitment, and vision that each of you brings to your work, has not altered. The throng echoed with a murmur of agreement. I continued by detailing our strategy to restore client confidence and maintain financial stability. I could see hope rekindling in my coworkers' eyes as I spoke. Jake's voice suddenly pierced the atmosphere. "All of this is false." As he bounded down the aisle, heads turned. "Nora is attempting to snatch me away. She planned the entire event to force me to leave." The room was filled with whispers and gasps. I held onto the podium and forced myself to remain composed. "This isn't the place or time, Jake. The timing is right." His face reddened with rage as he yelled. "My own father turned against me because of you. The board was altered by you. Enough of that." From the side of the stage, Kenneth's voice roared. He put a steady hand on my shoulder and went forward. "You did this to yourself, Jake. We got to this position because of your choices and actions." Jake's gaze flitted frantically between me and Kenneth. "Please, Dad, don't allow her to do this. It's a legacy from our family." Kenneth's face grew a little softer. "Son, the building's name isn't the only part of the legacy. It all comes down to honesty, diligence, and treating our clients and staff with respect. Nora knows that. It's time for you to do the same." There was a tight stillness in the room. I sensed that everyone was watching us, anticipating the outcome of this family drama. Jake appeared to be losing the struggle as his shoulders slumped. "That's it then? Just out?" I moved away from the podium and walked warily up to Jake. "Jake, it need not be the end. If you're prepared to work for it, you can still find a place here." I just had a glimpse of the man I used to love. Uncertain and vulnerable. Then his face became stern. "Dad, I don't need your sympathy, nor Nora's. I'll open my own business. You'll see. I'll construct something even better and larger." A startled silence followed him as he turned on his heel and marched out. Aware of the hundreds of people watching me, I went back to the podium. This was the turning point that would determine not only my leadership style, but also the company's future. "Difficult to witness," I said, my voice a little unsteady. "I know that was." However, it's a great illustration of why we're here today. This business isn't about the ambition or ego of one individual. It's about all of us collaborating to produce something truly remarkable. I stopped and stared out at my coworkers' expressions, some doubtful, others optimistic, all awaiting guidance. I cannot guarantee that it will be simple. We still have a long way to go. However, I can assure you of this. I will always act in the best interests of this business and the individuals that contribute to its success. You are that, you all. I felt a burden leave my shoulders as I went on to lay out our next course. The worst was over. Now that Jake was gone and his desperate attempt to discredit me had failed, I could finally take the lead on my own terms. However, I noticed a glimmer of concern in Kenneth's eyes as I met his, and I understood that although one chapter of this story was coming to an end, another was just getting started. The true test of my leadership and the tenacity of our business was yet to come. I was standing at my new office window, looking out at the metropolitan skyline. 6 months after that fateful corporate meeting, not only was I in Kenneth's nonprofit trust building, but I also had a fresh perspective on the world, which changed the perspective. I was startled out of my trance by a knock on the door. I called for you to come in. Sarah came in with a smile on her face. You won't believe this, Nora. The Henderson project? We succeeded. I couldn't resist grinning. I had always wanted to produce creative, socially conscious design work, and the Henderson project was just that. That is wonderful, Sarah. The group must be ecstatic. They are, she said, nodding. And you should be aware of something else. I waited, raising an eyebrow. Sarah inhaled deeply. Officially, Jake's business is bankrupt. This morning, they filed for Chapter 11. I was struck down by the news. A part of me had hoped Jake would find his path in spite of everything. Jake, too? Quietly, I asked. He hasn't been seen in days, but Bella? Sarah paused. She came here earlier in search of work. Jake left her high and dry, she said. As I took in this information, I collapsed into my chair. The Jake I had known, the man I had devoted myself to, was no longer there. He was replaced by a warning story that served as a reminder of how easily success can be destroyed by a poor foundation. Kenneth materialized in the doorway as though he had been called by my thoughts. He whispered, I heard the news. How are you doing? I forced a tiny smile. It's just a lot to process, but I'm fine. With pride and sadness mixed together in his eyes, Kenneth nodded. Nora, you've accomplished amazing things here. The projects you're working on, this new branch of the trust. You're making a difference. We are changing lives, I told him. Without your help, I could not have accomplished any of this. He dismissed my thanks with a wave. Nora, you succeeded. You transformed a horrible circumstance into something lovely. It's a unique gift. Once again, I was left alone with my thoughts as Kenneth and Sarah departed. I reflected on Jake and the dreams we had shared, as well as our shared existence. I reflected on Bella and how she had nothing left after pursuing wealth and prestige. I mostly thought about myself, though. I no longer felt like the woman I had been at the beginning of this, desperate to please and scared to advocate for myself. I was shocked to hear my phone buzz, a message from an unidentified number. Jake is here. Can we have a conversation? I glanced at the screen, my heart pounding. I would have seized the opportunity half a year ago. I inhaled deeply before typing my reply. I've moved on, Jake, and I apologize. As we settled around the conference table, tossing around ideas that sparked creativity and innovation, a wave of gratitude washed over me. This moment felt like a triumph. I belonged here, standing on my own 2 feet, surrounded by people who valued me for who I truly was, not for my connection to Jake or anyone else. The journey that brought me to this place had been anything but easy. It was riddled with heartbreak and challenges, but every step had led me to self-discovery, to strength, and to a renewed sense of purpose. I glanced around the table, taking in the eager, determined faces of my team. Their enthusiasm lit up the room, and I knew this was only the beginning. All right, I said, picking up a marker and walking to the whiteboard. Let's rethink the future, together. As we began to outline our plans, a powerful realization hit me. This was my real happily ever after. Not the picture-perfect fantasy I'd once dreamed of, but something far more meaningful. A fresh start that I had crafted with my own hands and heart. This work, this life, wasn't handed to me. It was earned, built piece by piece from the ashes of my former one. I knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be twists, turns, and moments of doubt. But I felt ready for whatever challenges lay in my path. Because now I understood a profound truth. My worth didn't depend on the actions or opinions of anyone else. It came from within, from the strength and resilience I had discovered deep inside myself. And that, I realized, was the greatest triumph of all. If this story inspired you, don't miss out on more incredible journeys. Subscribe to the SoraBook channel for fascinating stories in the next videos. You won't want to miss what's coming next.